Hello, good morning, and welcome to lecture number 15 in our course Project Stakeholder Management. In the previous lectures I had introduced the project management, stakeholder management and engagement process framework, which I pointed out is composed of different steps. Today what we are going to do is we are going to look at the first of those steps, which is understanding the project context. Now, before one jumps into managing and engaging stakeholders, before one even looks at who are the stakeholders, the first thing one has to do is to understand the context in which that particular project, whatever project it is, however large, however small, however simple, however complex, one has to really understand the contextual environment. That is internally as well as externally. Now, there are a lot of, as you know, there are lots of projects come in all shapes, all sizes, all categories. And what we are going to be doing in this lecture is we are going to be looking at the various categories of projects and also some of the typical contextual differences and similarities which would one find with regard to these different projects. And as you can already see from some of these little clip arts which I have put on the slide over here, these represent various types of projects. As you can see, there is, for example, building a bridge in the top left of your slide. There is building some dam on the top of your slide. There is ERP, which comes under the category of IT projects. These are also major types of projects. There is hardware development, there is medical related projects, making a new hospital, developing some new drug, for instance, and there are also events which I have given here in the bottom right, these colored rings over here, which represent some games, big events, sporting events. They also fall under the category of projects. And all these different types of projects, and these are just a few which I have put here symbolically, many other categories which we'll be looking at now over the next hour or so. All these, of course, they all have their stakeholders. All these, they have their own peculiarities in terms of how they are managed, how they should be managed, where they are undertaken, and so forth. Now, the first step in managing, engaging project stakeholders is to identify, carefully study and identify the context in which the project takes place. In other words, what we do when we try to understand the context is we try to look at the broader picture in which that project is embedded. As we know, you should be knowing from your study of project management, is that all projects are unique. There is always a difference between projects. Even if you have the same type of project, the same category, maybe even in the same location, maybe even with the same goal, you will always find some difference between those projects which are being undertaken, whether it's in terms of how they are being undertaken, the style of management, the way in which stakeholders are engaged, the quality of planning, etc., etc. There always will be some uniqueness about those projects, even if they appear very similar. And of course, contextual differences may require quite different approaches for managing, engaging their respective stakeholders. You also have to look at the geographic dimension. You can do a very similar project in, say, Norway, and you can do a very similar project in Pakistan. You can do a very similar project in Botswana. Different countries, different continents, similar project, but the context is very different. The external environment is very different. The laws, for instance, which relate to the project may be very different. The management styles, the management approaches may be very different. The environment, the social environment, the cultural environment, the political environment, and so forth, these all could be quite different. So even though they are very similar projects, their context in which they are undertaken is quite different. That means that what works well in one context may or may not work very well in another context. One has to adapt to that particular context, because the context, the external environment, also the internal environment, they have a huge impact on the performance of your project. And that's why, because of this uniqueness of projects, because of this contextual element, this difference in context between projects, you could say that there is really no universal stakeholder management and engagement model that fits all projects. You have to understand the context, and then you have to work your way down up to the strategy of managing and engaging your stakeholders. And as I said, what works well in one context may or may not work well in another context. It may work better in another context, it may not work at all in another context. Now, as I said, projects, they come in many shapes and sizes, in many different categories, which we'll be looking at now in a minute or two. Each category may have different implications for the way the project stakeholders are managed or engaged. I mean, if it's a big civil engineering, construction, mega-type project, there will be a different quality of management and engagement of stakeholders than there would be, say, in a very small local community park renovation or landscaping project. Stakeholder management engagement on a corporation's project to introduce a computerized human resource information system, for example, would be, presumably, far less complex than the stakeholder management engagement required on a project for constructing a new airport. Because in a new airport you have very large number of stakeholders, you have a very heterogeneous stakeholders, and you have some stakeholders who may have very diverging interests with regards to the project, for instance, which you may not have on a local project within a corporation, within an organization. Doesn't have to be a corporation, can be public sector agency, can be a not-for-profit organization. There the quality of stakeholder management and engagement would perhaps be somewhat different in terms of being less complex than the quality of stakeholder management and engagement you would require on a large construction type project. Now, when we talk about different types of projects, which we have to understand, because the type of project is really determining the sort of management and engagement of stakeholders, well then you have to see that it's not an easy thing to categorize projects. It's actually quite difficult, and in the project management literature there have been different attempts by different researchers, by different academics, by different practitioners to try and come to some kind of universal category system for projects. It's proven to be easier said than done. There is one categorization scheme which has been done by a person by the name of Russell Archibald, and this categorization scheme, in my opinion, does go a long way towards accurately categorizing projects. It doesn't completely go there, but it goes a long way in the right direction, and this is the one which I thought I should introduce you to, so you would get some idea. Not only that there are lots and lots of projects around. We always talk about projects, we talk about project management as if it's very natural, which in a sense it is. But first one has to try and understand, you know, sort of how do you sort of put projects in different groups, you know, how can you sort of see projects in a more sort of differential perspective, rather than just lumping all the projects together and saying, yeah, these are projects and we apply project management. It's good, it's not so good. It's good in the sense that, yes, you have to apply project management. Yes, there are projects everywhere, but you also have to try and understand what are the types of projects. And Russell Archibald, he has come up here with this category system, which is composed of different categories of projects. One category, starting right at the top here, the top left of your slide, is a category of aerospace and defense projects. Now, when you think about aerospace and defense, a lot of things immediately should come to mind, a lot of mental images, of weapons and all kinds of things, because defense is a huge industry, as we all know. Every country spends a lot of funds on defense, which one can debate that, whether the wisdom of that, whether the money should be spent on defense or whether it could be spent on other types of projects. But we don't want to get into that. Defense projects, within that category of aerospace and defense projects, there are many types of subcategories or subsystems here, like, for example, defense systems, space systems, space projects, military projects. Okay, there is some overlapping taking place, but these are given here as separate sort of categories. Examples of aerospace and defense projects. For example, the development of a new weapon system. Developing a new weapon system is a project, R&D. Major weapon system upgrades. We're not talking about small routine upgrades here, but we're talking about major upgrades. Like if you have some kind of a fighter plane and you're having a major upgrade in the sense that it can have a much longer range, or the weapons which it is having have also got a much longer range, and so forth. Major weapon system upgrades, satellite development launches, space station models, task force invasions. We talked about war, that it can also be considered as a project provided it is planned and there are estimates for the cost and the time. So based on Russell Archibald's category, aerospace of defense projects, and here are just a few examples: new weapon systems, major weapon upgrades, satellites, space stations, invasions. These are all projects, and these are all very big projects. They consume a huge amount of resources, going into the billions of dollars or euros or pounds, rupees, whatever monetary unit you want to take over there. And of course, all these defense projects, like every single project in the world, has got its stakeholders. And in this case, it could be quite a very large number of stakeholders. And not only stakeholders within a country which is developing such systems, but stakeholders which are in other countries. For example, if a major weapon system is being developed in Pakistan, it's not only the people of Pakistan, the army of Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, which are all stakeholders here for a major new weapon system, but it's also across the border in countries like India. They also are stakeholders in the sense of competitors. They are seeing what kind of weapon systems are being produced here, and they want to see whether they can come up with something which can match that or exceed that. So you have got these stakeholder element over there. In this case, you will not be having so many local communities or environmentalists and all that. They may also have a say, mostly a critical say, but in this case, the major stakeholders would be some other set of stakeholders. If you look at the second category of projects based on Russell Archibald's categorization scheme, you can see here they are business and organization change projects. Well, every project is intended to bring about change, hopefully as much positive change as possible. So actually using the word change in projects is maybe not a very fortunate choice of words, but you can see this is a whole category in itself. What comes under business and organization change projects? There are many types of subcategories, like, for example, acquisitions and mergers, which is a huge business going into the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars worth. There are process improvement projects, and all kinds of projects come under that: process redesign, process re-engineering, process optimization, process modification, and so forth. In the context of management, very large number of projects can come over here because all the kinds of work activities which is being performed in any organization. These are all process-based activities. Another subcategory under business and organization change projects is new business ventures, organizational restructuring, sort of merging departments, changing the way in which things are done, legal proceedings also. Very large number of subcategories here, and the examples which are given, which match this category of projects, business and organization change projects: acquire and integrate competing company, major improvement in project management. Project management is not static, but it evolves, different maturity levels. Forming and launching a new company, consolidating divisions and downsizing the company, major litigation, legal case. So few examples given over here which match these subcategories given over here. And you can see it's a huge area, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, euros, pounds, rupees, etc. They are being spent every year on these types of projects. And there, if you look at acquisitions and mergers, and you think about the stakeholders who are involved over here, if you have one company which is acquiring another, or one company which is merging another, acquisitions and mergers are, of course, two different things, but they are treated under one heading. A lot of stakeholders. It's not only the companies concerned who are, one is acquiring the other, or the two who are merging, but it is all the stakeholders who have got links to that company. It's not only the internal stakeholders, the managers, the employees, the clients, the customers, etc. Well, these are external stakeholders, but it's also a host of other stakeholders like local communities, local government agencies, and so forth. All these are stakeholders. You have a very complex set, a very complex community of stakeholders in this case, and if you consider it, this community of stakeholders is very different than what you would find, for example, over here when you are making a new weapon system, or you are planning to launch a satellite. It's a completely different sort of community of stakeholders, which means also that it requires different management and engagement strategies. The management and engagement strategy which you have for a military project, a very large military project, of course, is not going to be the same as you have, let us say, for an organizational restructuring project. So you can see there are contextual differences over there. Moving on to our categorization of projects. Third category, which Russell Archibald has proposed, is communication systems projects, which is quite technical in nature, again, like the military projects. Network communication systems, switching communication systems, and then the examples which have been given to match these communication systems projects are microwave communications network, third generation wireless communication system. Again, if you look at it, it has its own particular community of stakeholders. In this case, it could be having a potentially very large community of stakeholders, because all of us are now more or less using these high-powered communication systems, and all of us, we are having some utility from it. So there's quite a large number of stakeholders over here. Event projects as a fourth category. When I had showed you the opening slide, with these various clip arts, there was also one regarding events. Well, events, which can be many things, holding big conferences, holding big sporting functions, workshops, seminars, symposia, all these come under the category of events. And it's a whole subject area in itself, which is evolving in management science, event management. Well, under event projects, there are also a large number of examples. A few are just given over here. Like the 2004 Summer Olympics, Archibald's system was proposed some years ago. That's why they have got here these older dates. But you could say the Beijing Olympic Games, that was also an event. the World Cup football match. That's also events. In America, the Super Bowl, political conventions, congresses, meeting, gathering. All these come under the category of events, and they have their own community of stakeholders, which can also be very extensive. And if you take, for example, the Beijing Olympics, which was watched by something like over 1 billion people across the globe, well, all these are stakeholders. They had been looking, they had an interest in this event. They were looking forward to it, and when the event took place, then they actually participated either actively by going to Beijing or passively by watching on their TV screens. So over 1 billion, in this case over 1 billion stakeholders. Information systems, software projects is another category. Okay, there's all kinds of things comes under that. New project management information systems. Later on, towards the end of this course, if we have some time, I would like to introduce you to the topic of project management information systems, which is very, very important from a stakeholder point of view, in that it facilitates the flow of information among different stakeholders, both internal to the project as well as external to the project. But you can see here that under software projects, it's a huge field. If you think about all the software projects, which are all the softwares which are out in the market, I have no idea how many there are, but I think it would be a very, very large number. All these started out as projects, and they had their own stakeholders, of course. And you have got some software projects which are very small, very in-house, just trying to help a certain unit or a certain section manage their informational assets in a better way. And then you, of course, have some very complex software development projects, new operating systems by Microsoft, for example. So from the stakeholder perspective, there are big differences even within one category of projects, and what to say across categories of projects. Then we have a whole very large category of projects which comes under Archibald's heading of facilities projects. And facility, is a physical place, and where some work is taking place. And here you can see all the different types of projects which come under facilities projects, different types of sub-projects which come under that. Facility decommissioning, closing down, that is a facility, like a nuclear power plant. Demolishing a facility, the actual act of demolishing, breaking the walls and the stones and the foundation, etc. That is also a project. Facility maintenance and modification, making it bigger, making it maybe higher, changing the design, things like that. Facility design, procurement, construction, civil, energy, environmental, high-rise, industrial, commercial, residential, and ships. Designing all these, constructing all these are all projects. And examples given here by Archibald are closure of nuclear power stations, after they have reached the end of their useful life, after maybe 20 or 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. Demolition of high-rise buildings. You might have seen sometimes on TV or on the internet, you have a very large building, explosives are put at the base of that building, and then the whole building comes down vertically without causing any damage on the sides, mostly. Process plant maintenance, turnaround, conversion of plant for new products, markets. Some years ago, there was research going on into the conversion of military facilities into civilian facilities. For example, previously they used to manufacture products for the military, then they were turned around, redesigned into manufacturing civilian products, or there were military bases and they were converted into student dormitories or hotels, something like that. Flood control dam, highway interchange, new gas-fired power generation plant, pipelines, chemical waste cleanup, building a 40-story office building, building a new manufacturing plant, new shopping center, mall, office building, new housing subdivision, new tanker, container or passenger ship. Well, these are all examples of projects which come under this heading, category of facilities projects. Now, from a stakeholder perspective, if you look at it, all of them will be having their own communities of stakeholders. They will not be identical for each of these projects. There might be some overlapping which is taking place, again depending on the context of the project, for example, geographical location or intended beneficiaries, but otherwise each of them will have their own set of stakeholders, like for example a new shopping center or a new shopping mall. Who would be, for example, the stakeholders there? There would be quite a few. There would not only be the internal stakeholders or the primary stakeholders who are responsible for creating this shopping center, the financiers and the architects and the consultants and the contractors and the subcontractors and the owners, and etc., etc., etc. But there will also be possibly quite a large number of external or secondary stakeholders, all those people who would like to use such a new shopping center, who would like to shop there or even just to browse over there and see what's there. These are all stakeholders. For instance, so it goes on and on and on here, and you can see here that the stakeholders which are here in these types of projects, you can see here that there will be differences compared to the stakeholders of aerospace defense projects, or those who are concerned with business and organization change projects, maybe also here the information system projects. The stakeholders here will be to a large extent a different set than you would be having in those other categories of projects. So therefore you cannot have the kind of same stakeholder management and engagement strategies which you have on these projects and apply them on the others. It's probably not going to work. It's a complete different requirement of information, frequency of information, content of information, and engagement, practical engagement, and so forth. A very large category of projects is these so-called international development projects, which we are having quite a few ongoing in Pakistan. Agriculture, rural development type projects, and programs also. Education projects, health-related projects, nutrition-related projects, population-related projects, small-scale enterprise-related projects. And some of the examples which are given over here: people and process intensive projects in developing countries funded by the World Bank, the regional development banks, under which comes, for example, the Asian Development Bank or the African Development Bank, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, UNIDO and other UN and government agencies, of course other agencies like SIDA, GIZ, the Swedish aid agency, DFID from the United Kingdom, the French agency, the Belgium agency, the Netherlands agency, and also some of the other agencies which I had showed you about in one of the previous classes. Well, all of these agencies, development implementing agencies, as well as development financing institutions, of which there are also quite a large number of them, they are all engaged in these international development projects, of which I've just given here a small number. Of course, there are other types of projects. At the moment, I'm involved in a project for ComStats with the Asia Foundation Citizens Voice project. It's about empowerment. It comes under the heading of empowerment. There are also gender type projects, projects for minorities, projects relating to human rights, development of liberal thought, etc. All these come under the heading of development projects. And then, as you know from some of the previous classes, they have also their own very particular set of stakeholders. Then there is the category of infrastructure projects, which you could say, well, partly they overlap with facilities, but they are treated separately over here. And there are a large number of projects which come under infrastructure, such as energy, which are oil, coal, gas, power, generation, distribution, also solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, these renewable forms of energy which are now getting a lot of attention. Then there are industrial projects which come under infrastructure, telecommunications infrastructure projects, transportation infrastructure, urbanization infrastructure, water supply, sewage, irrigation. All this comes under the heading of infrastructure projects, and some examples are also given over here. Capital and civil works intensive projects, which are often different from facilities projects, that is in the previous slide which I mentioned, in that they include, as part of the project, creating an organizational entity to operate and maintain the facility, and lending agencies impose their project lifecycle reporting requirements. Okay, so there are some fine distinctions here between infrastructure projects and these facility type projects as they are given over here in this previous slide. But there is also overlapping taking place. And all of you should have some idea that for infrastructure projects, especially for very large infrastructure projects which go over a large area, which cover a large area, or have a very large scope of activity, that they have a very large number of stakeholders. If you are building, for example, some of these mega dams, like Pakistan is trying to build at the moment, the Bashar Dam and so forth, which have got a generating capacity of several thousand megawatts, well, practically the whole country of Pakistan is a stakeholder, because, as you know, it's very energy deficient, electricity deficient, and if you have a project here which the result of which can generate several thousand megawatts of electricity, which can be fed into the national grid and then distributed across the country, well, then practically everyone, at least all those who have access to electricity or want to have access to electricity, they all would be stakeholders in this type of project. Media and entertainment projects, which is another category of projects here. Surprise, surprise, all the Lollywood and the Bollywood and the Hollywood, all the stuff which comes out from there, movies and the documentaries and so forth, these are all projects. Like a motion picture, TV segment, live play, music event, this is all projects. Whether it's a film or a digital film or a new TV episode or a soap opera or a new opera premiere, all these come under the category of media and entertainment projects, which of course also have their stakeholders. Everyone is looking forward to James Bond or something, so one could say, or Mission Impossible, so one is all stakeholders for such types of projects. And of course there's a lot of interest, and in the media industry they don't always want to divulge each and every detail of the films they are making, but they will release little tidbits of information, so to keep people curious and interested as part of the engagement strategy of their stakeholders. Then there is the product and service development projects. There's another one of Russell Archibald's project categorizations. And here under product and service development projects, a very large number of projects, a very huge volume of investment, information technology hardware, all the nice laptops and iPads and iPhones and all that which we are using, industrial product and processes, consumer products and processes. And consumer products, there are vast number of them on the market. Pharmaceutical products, processes, and services, financial and all other types of services. And some of the examples which are given here, this is just a tiny drop in the ocean of examples. New desktop computer, for instance. Nowadays we might not be using desktops that much. We might be going more towards laptops, which are portable and equally sophisticated. New earth-moving machine, which you can use on a construction site, for example. New automobile, all these cars coming out from Daimler, Daimler-Benz, and from BMW, and all these, Lamborghinis and all these things, all these new automobiles, well, they started off as projects on the drawing board. New food products, new beverages, new cholesterol-lowering drug. Well, I could use one of those. New life insurance or annuity offering. Well, it's all examples of projects, many projects. All the things we see in the shops, all the food items, all the beverage items, all the appliances, all the nice designs and all the nice things which we can buy nowadays. All of them started out as projects. There was an idea, and some research was done, data was collected, market surveys were performed, and then people got together and they said, well, let's make this product, or let's come up with this service. And they sat together and they came up with it, they designed it, they made a prototype of it, maybe they did some limited market offering to see what the reactions would be of consumers before going into mass production. So huge number of projects, and of course they also have their stakeholder management and engagement strategies. Usually the engagement and management strategy is more focused on the internal stakeholders, those who are actually providing the resources, providing the expertise, the knowledge, the design input, and so forth. But also there is management and engagement of external stakeholders or secondary stakeholders, the future consumers, such as you and me, in the sense that information is given out, usually not too much information, because there's a lot of competition and you don't want your competitors to know each and everything what you're doing, but usually information does sort of seep out, or leaking out, and one tends to find out then a little bit about these projects and what we can expect from them once the output is there. Then there is another category of projects, R&D projects, which is a huge category, and R&D is taking place across the globe, in some places more than others, and different types of areas come under R&D, such as, for example, environmental R&D, industrial R&D, R&D with regards to economic development, medical R&D, and scientific R&D, etc., etc., etc. Some of the examples which are given here are measuring changes in the ozone layer. As we know, the ozone layer is this layer high up above the surface of the Earth, which is protecting us from harmful rays from outer space. And this ozone layer has come under a lot of pressure in the last few decades. So one has to do research and come up with some way how to protect this layer so it can protect us. How to reduce pollutant emissions, determining the best crop, for example, sub-Sahara Africa, test new treatment for breast cancer, determine the possibility of life on Mars. Okay, one has to come up with a project which can, develop some machine or some system which can then see if there is any possibility of life on that planet, and they're doing that, I think, at the moment. Well, also in the case of Pakistan, you could say, well, certain crops have been badly affected by viruses, and there is a need for research into developing some new method of preventing crops from being affected by viruses here in this country. So a lot of projects come under R&D, and they also have their community of stakeholders, like all other projects do. In this case, stakeholders, on the one hand, they can be many. I mean, if you're talking about new treatment for breast cancer, if you can come up with some very new, revolutionary, very effective treatment, then of course you have a very large number of stakeholders all across the globe. So on the one hand, you have all these, possibly a very large number of stakeholders. On the other hand, you have a project environment which is perhaps slightly different from other project environments in the sense that here you are not really very sure about whether your project will succeed or not. Will you be able to come up with a new treatment? Will you be able to reduce pollutants? Good idea, but it's not always possible to say in advance that you are going to do it and how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take. At least with other projects, which may have not been done before, you have some experience value. In this case, you don't. But of course, you also have stakeholders, and they definitely have to be managed and engaged. And then there is another open heading here under Russell Archibald, and that is other categories of projects. Now, personally, I think that this categorization scheme, it's quite comprehensive, but it leaves out certain areas. And I don't want to go into them now. I've been thinking about it. Things do come to mind. For example, forensic exhumation. I'm just trying to think how one could fit it into some other category. Haven't really been able to come up with that. Privatization of public sector industries. I have not really seen how it can fit into other of the project categories which have been given here under Russell Archibald's categorization scheme. But there are a lot of, these types of projects, miscellaneous projects, which are very difficult to put under other categories. So maybe in future, this can be then further developed. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, the point I've been trying to make here so far is that projects, they come in many different categories, and within each category, you have many different subcategories and possibly even subcategories. You can break it down further. All these categories over here, all of them have got stakeholders. You will not find a single category. You will not find a single subcategory. You will not find a single project within any of these categories or subcategories which do not have stakeholders. All of the stakeholders have to be managed. All of the stakeholders have to be engaged. Of course, the way you manage and engage them will be different. It will be different from category to category because every category has its own particular normal set of stakeholders. And even in the same category, there will be differences across time. There will be differences across space, meaning a project which is being undertaken in country A, for example, the United States, will not be undertaken in the same way like the similar project would be undertaken in country B, China, or Russia for that matter. And the stakeholders would be different. And the way in which the stakeholders will be managed and engaged on the project will also be different to reflect the different contextual differences, the different institutions, the different laws, the different societies, the different way of culture, the way of doing things, the different communication patterns between stakeholders, and so forth, and so forth. Lots of contextual differences which determine how the stakeholders are managed and engaged. Now let's just look at this slide which I have prepared for you over here, understanding the project context and the importance of a project. Now, there are some projects which are very important for organizations, commercial, public sector, not-for-profit organizations. Some projects are very important. For a commercial organization, new product development, for example, or new service development. That is a very important project. Why is it important? Well, it's important because the future of the organization can possibly depend on that project. If the new project or if the new product is very successful in the market, that can bring a lot of revenue for a commercial organization. A lot of revenue, of course, is very good. It can expand, it can consolidate, it can dominate the market. This is a very important project. There might be other projects which are comparatively speaking, not so important. Maybe sort of renovating the office area, making it perhaps more a better working environment, which of course is nice, it's desirable, one should do it. But compared to a new product development project, it's comparatively not so important. So there are these different levels of importance on projects. Some projects may be very important, may be critical, mission critical. There are other projects which might be small, restricted, short-term, simple, and of course desirable, but not so important. So if you look at this, which I prepared over here on the left side, on this scale, the importance of the project ranging from low importance in the blue box to high importance in the red box. And if you look over here at the bottom, along this axis here, the criticality of effectively managing and engaging project stakeholders, the importance, the crucialness for effectively managing and engaging the project stakeholders from low to high. You will see I have drawn two boxes over here, both which have been given in a yellow border. Now this box on the bottom right, you can see here it falls, as far as importance is concerned, it's less important. And here, as far as criticality of effectively managing and engaging stakeholders it's also less important. On such projects, the level of attention given to managing and engaging the stakeholders will vary. On smaller, less significant projects, comparatively smaller effort and smaller resources may be invested in it. If you have a project, in other words, which is not so important, it's not mission critical for your organization, whatever organization it may be, then obviously you don't want to throw all your resources into managing and engaging the project stakeholders. You will have to manage and engage them, but you will not put that much resources, that much energy, that much time than you would put, say, for example, in a project which is very important for your organization. Here, this box on the top right. As a project's importance increases, more effort and resources need to be invested by the project planners and implementers in managing and engaging the project stakeholders. Why? In case of project failure due to issues with stakeholders, the fallout in terms of lost resources, damage to reputation, demotivation, etc. may be immense. If you have a very important project, which is ongoing, maybe restructuring your organization, trying to streamline it, make it more efficient, make it more adaptable, and you fail to properly engage your stakeholders here, and they resist your project, and you can't perform the project, or it fails, the desired outcomes are not there, well, then that's very bad for your organization. It's going to lose out a lot. Not only has it lost out in terms of the time and cost which has been invested in the project, but also it has lost out in terms of its reputation. Oh, this organization could not manage the project, it could not implement the project. And that gets spoken around, so the image, the reputation go down. And all this can happen if you do not properly manage and engage your project stakeholders, if you do not put enough thought, enough resources, enough energy and enough time into managing them. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you have to look at the project context, how important is the project for your organization, and or not so important for your organization, and then one has to manage and engage the stakeholders accordingly. There is no one model fits all solution, that you just take one model of managing, engaging the stakeholders. Okay, it works on this project, it works on this project, apply it on each and every project. You have to look at the context, the specific context of that particular project, and then on that basis you have to come up with stakeholder management and engagement strategies. Now, I have come up with my own sort of a scheme over here, categorizing stakeholders by number, diversity, and complexity. These are three dimensions over here, and I divide stakeholders into four categories, that is category A, category B, category C, category D. Category A, the blue box, category B, the orange box, category C, the green box, category D, the brown box. So it goes down sort of here like this. Stakeholders in category A, these are fewer in number and relatively homogeneous, relatively, again, easy to manage. Stakeholder category A, so that's fairly straightforward. Category B, such stakeholders, they could be numerous and heterogeneous, but they are relatively easy to manage. Stakeholders in category C, these are numerous and heterogeneous, sometimes difficult to manage. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have got stakeholders in category D, which are very numerous and heterogeneous and very difficult to manage. So it ranges from A, relatively few, homogeneous, easy to manage, and it goes all the way up to D, very numerous, heterogeneous, and very difficult to manage. And you have got everything in between. I have only put here 4 categories because, well, for one thing, it easily fits in the slide. But of course, within these different categories, you have got subcategories. For example, under A, you might have stakeholders who are few in number and relatively homogeneous, and there may be some who are easier to manage, but in some there may be less easier to manage. Overall, they are easy to manage, but there are some who are easier to manage than others, and so forth, for the different categories which are given over here. Okay, that's one slide too many. All right. Let us look over here now. Project stakeholders category A, comparatively smaller projects being executed within or across departments, divisions, and organizations. Category A project stakeholders are relatively or usually few in number, easy to identify, and their roles and responsibilities in the projects are clearly defined. On the difficulty spectrum, they are usually the easiest to manage. If you see maybe introducing a new IT system in the human resource department, maybe redesigning a process in the finance department, maybe conducting some new landscaping at the main office or in the administration office, where you have a lot of visitors who are coming and so forth. Well, these generally fall under the category of smaller, easier to manage stakeholders. It doesn't mean that every stakeholder is a walkover. Every stakeholder is going to be very supportive of your project. You might find those who are not in favor of it. You might find those who do not want to have an IT system introduced. Maybe they are elderly, or maybe for a long time they have been using the previous system, which in their opinion has worked very well, and they are resistant to having a new IT system put in, and so forth. So you can have all kinds of stakeholders there. But on the difficulty spectrum, these are usually easiest to manage. You can get around them. You can talk to them. You can convince them. There are ways and means of doing that. It's not like you're having a huge mega project and you have to deal with environmentalists and politicians and the media and all that. You might have some intra-organizational politics there, but usually on these types of projects, category A type projects, they are manageable. Then you have here the category B type projects. These I put under projects which usually tend to recur over time. For example, new product service development projects or modifications to existing product or service offerings. Also larger IT projects and military, scientific and movie projects. Now, these category B stakeholders on these types of projects, they may be numerous and heterogeneous, but are usually relatively easily managed. Like, for example, if you have a new product development project, making a new car, making a new television, or something like that, a new iPad, etc. Of course, you have a very large number of stakeholders. All the customers, for instance, who will be buying that project, they are stakeholders. And of course, you have to have some kind of management and engagement strategy here. What do these stakeholders expect from such products? What functionality What features, characteristics do they expect? You have to engage with them there. You have to communicate with them. But other than that, dealing with stakeholders is not very difficult over here. It's not that you have a lot of stakeholders who are opposing it and who will do their best to create problems for your projects. Of course, you have competitors who will be watching you very closely, but otherwise, these things, they go on, usually behind closed doors in some lab or some product development center. And the management and engagement of stakeholders over there is relatively easily done. It's not a very big problem. The same with movie projects. If you're making a new movie, of course, you have to bring a very large number of stakeholders together, the cast, the crew. You have to get permission if you're filming in a city somewhere, and you have to get sponsors. You have to bring all these stakeholders together. The people who will be watching your movie after it has been produced, who will be going to the cinema or buying the DVD. These are all stakeholders, but it's usually not a big problem to manage them. Movies, usually, as far as the making is concerned, they tend to be quite successful. Of course, there are sometimes issues with actors and actresses and issues with other stakeholders, but by and large, the management and engagement of stakeholders on these types of projects is not too, comparatively speaking, it's not too difficult. Then you have project stakeholders in the category C. For example, projects which are undertaken by non-governmental organizations, small, medium-sized social development type projects, not the very big ones, small, medium-sized, which a typical NGO over here would be undertaking. Small construction, urban projects and joint ventures. This is the type of projects which I would put under category C. Category C project stakeholders, they can be numerous and heterogeneous. Though mostly supportive, careful management of them is required to avoid complications over the project life cycle. So here, although like with category B, you also have got numerous and heterogeneous stakeholders, in category C, the stakeholders are comparatively more difficult to manage and engage. And that perhaps follows because here you have a larger community of stakeholders, and you have a more differentiated community of stakeholders. When you talk about small construction and urban projects, for example, although you cannot compare them to the large mega projects, but still at a localized level, you have a very large, potentially very large number of stakeholders. You have local communities, you have got families, you have got local environmental groups, not necessarily huge big ones like Greenpeace or Friends of the Earth. Plus you have local government agencies, the local media, etc., etc. So a lot of different types of stakeholders over here. And these stakeholders too, some of them can create problems for your project. So they have to be more carefully managed and engaged. Not the same quality of management and engagement that you would expect on a mega construction project, for instance, but still one has to be careful because even these stakeholders over here, in this localized context, they can create a lot of issues, a lot of complications for your project if they are not properly managed and engaged. Then we come to the final category over here, which is project stakeholders category D. Now this is where you have to be careful. This is where you have got the very, very big projects, highly complex, time and cost intensive projects, can be costing billions. Typically large dams, multi-purpose dams, large power stations, oil and gas pipelines, big factories, big mines, big highways, airports, major events like the Olympic Games, large social development projects, like trying to promote literacy in a country, as part of a concerted campaign, or now the polio eradication, which is much talked about in this country as a health-related program, which is very large in its scope. So these are very big projects. We're not talking about small dams, which are maybe going to generate sort of 50 megawatts of electricity or something. We're talking about the very big players over here, which are going many hundreds, at the minimum, many hundreds of megawatts, thousands of megawatts. We are talking about long oil and gas pipelines, which might be transnational, might be even transcontinental, like the pipeline from Siberia in Russia all the way to Europe. Major highways like Islamabad, Lahore, Islamabad, Peshawar. Major events, as I pointed out, like Olympic Games, the Football World Cup, and large social development projects. Very large number of stakeholders, very diverse stakeholders. And many of these stakeholders might be quite opposed to your project for some reason or the other. Usually, they would have some genuine interest. They might say that, well, your project is going to cause a lot of damage to the environment, or your project is going to cause a lot of resettlement of people, and that's going to have a big economic loss and a social cost which is attached to it. Or your project is just going to create benefits for a small group of people at the expense of the broader community or society. So you'll always have some stakeholders will be opposed to your project, and sometimes the reasons may be genuine, sometimes they might be really trivial. Sometimes you might just have stakeholders who are opposed to your project because in principle they oppose any big project, whether there is merit in it or not. And some can be very unpredictable, some may exhibit very hostile behavior, and this can be a big problem for your project because these stakeholders who are actively opposed to it, they have got options at their disposal, whether these are administrative options, whether these are political options, whether these are legal options, or even they might be physically violent. They might resort to certain types of activities, which we also do see on projects at various places around the world these days. So this is where the most complex project stakeholder management and engagement will be applied in this category D. This is where creativity really has to come into play. This is where a lot of resources will have to be invested, a lot of effort will have to be invested, a lot of patience will have to be invested, a lot of time will have to be invested in order to appropriately manage these and engage these project stakeholders. And we have seen so many examples of large projects which are running into trouble, not because of some technical issues or because of terrain issues or technology related issues, but they are running into problems because of stakeholder related issues. They have not consulted with local communities. They have just totally ignored them, moved into their backyard and started their projects, which is one of the worst ways to do a project, is to ignore the people element, to ignore the social element. And that's what we'll all be coming to in future classes. So just to briefly recap what we have done over here, as you can see, we have first of all, we've talked about this Russell Archibald's project categorization scheme, in which I pointed out that there are different categories of projects. Each category has got subcategories and maybe having subcategories, etc., etc. Very large number of projects. Most of the projects in the world will come under this categorization scheme. But of course, it's not complete, and it can be refined further. The quality of stakeholder management and engagement will be different in all of these categories of projects to reflect contextual differences. I've also pointed out that you can look at stakeholders in this using this categorization scheme also, A, B, C, D, or if you want, you can make it A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You can further break it down. And then you can look at the projects. You can put all the projects in one of these categories and then see, how they will have to be managed. You can see here A, B, C, D, ranging from very simple stakeholder management and engagement on the one hand to very complex stakeholder management and engagement on the other hand. Anyway, that's enough for this lecture. Please think about these contextual differences. And in the next lecture, I'm going to move on to the second step in the project stakeholder management and engagement process framework, and that is identifying project stakeholders. We have now looked at the context. We've tried to understand the context. And after that, when you have understood the context and you have the framework for the project, you can see in which framework the project is being undertaken, then you can move on to identifying the project stakeholders. And there are also quite a number of methods for doing that, which we'll look at in the next class. So thank you very much for bearing with me, and see you all soon.